This town is so much stranger than anybody ever tells you. It's a place called Centralia, buried in the hills of Pennsylvania, and I'm convinced that everybody that talks about it is purposely leaving out the real reason it was abandoned. All they ever mention is the mine fire, a freak accident. Nothing to see here. The government evacuated the whole town to safety. What a heroic narrative they put out. And it's so believable until you actually talk to somebody who lived there. Nobody talks about what was happening before the evacuation, or why some people refuse to even look towards the smoke till this day. There's a reason the roads are cracked open like wounds, and it's not just a fire. There's something deeply wrong about that place, and we had no idea how dark and evil it really was until we got there. If you're a regular viewer of the channel, please like the video. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing to the channel. We'd love to have you. If you're watching on a podcast platform, please consider giving us a 5-star review at the end. And we give away free merchandise every week on this channel, so scan this QR code or click the link in the description. It's completely free. Just follow the directions. So it was early 2020, the world was completely shut down, and I was in my early 20s. I'm not gonna bore you with all of the talk of that time, or get into any details reminiscing about it. The reality was, we were young, the world was completely shut down, there was nothing to do, and we lived in a city, so we got out. We spent that entire time practically road tripping, going all over the country, staying away from the major metropolis, and spending our times in smaller towns, in the woods and national parks. But there was this one particular stretch of the trip. We were going from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. So you're driving through rural Pennsylvania. And just to get you up to speed, I was with my girlfriend, who's my wife now, and one of my best friends, Jimmy. We were in his car driving from Pittsburgh to Philly, and we were dead center of the trip. We're listening to music, we're having a good time, we're in the middle of nowhere. We're trying to stay as far away from restrictions as possible. We're pretending like none of it is happening. And my friend Jimmy was on his furlough because he's a first responder. So he had like 3 weeks to spend with us, and he wanted to go visit one of his best friends in Philadelphia. He had been to that area a lot more than us. So as we're driving, having the time of our life, he mentions that he wants to stop at this one particular town that his friend had showed him a couple years earlier. Jimmy's obsessed with the little things. Like if you go by a harbor, he'll tell you how a harbor operates. If you walk by a building that had a fire and he put it out, he'll tell you every single step of how his team went about putting out the fire and why it started. He's into what he's into, and it's fascinating hearing somebody who's so into something tell you about it. And as we were driving past this one place, he basically starts begging me and Jess to take a quick detour so he could show it to us. We had no idea what to expect, but he starts going off about the history of this place. He's like, it's called Centralia, one of the wildest things ever happened. He's like, dude, back in like 1962, they accidentally set fire to an underground coal mine. They were burning trash in their landfill or something, and somehow it set fire to their mine. So underneath this town has been on fire for like 60 years, and apparently it's going to keep burning for like 200 more. See, I'm not a big fire nerd, but like I said, Jimmy is. And he's breaking it down to us. Dude, you have no idea how crazy this actually is. They had to evacuate this entire place. The government had to buy out all of the properties. The streets were cracking and falling apart, and carbon monoxide is coming up through the cracks in the sinkholes. And I'm looking back at Jess, who's in the back seat, and we're giving each other looks like, are we really about to drive through a place that has cracks in the roads and carbon monoxide poisoning just drifting around in the air? But Jimmy seems like it was one of the best tourist attractions he had ever been to. So we asked some follow-up questions and we're like, okay, I mean, is it safe now? And he's like, yeah, absolutely, dude. So I take his word for it. He fights fires professionally. And we agreed to do a short stop there with him just so he could show us around. It takes us about 10 minutes off the main highway to get there. And we pull into this absolutely bizarre area. You can feel when Centralia starts because you stop seeing buildings. It's like driving into a small town and somebody deleted the buildings and the buildings only. Like there's still electric poles, you'll see a fire hydrant here and there. You'll even turn down a small road and there's multiple concrete staircases going up to where a house used to be with a mailbox next to them. I thought it was very odd that they didn't bother knocking down the stairs in the mailboxes or removing the fire hydrants. The fire hydrants even had bags over them saying like not in service, but the houses are completely gone. And obviously the woods and the foliage start to engulf the entire area, but it doesn't change the fact that you feel like you're driving down a small town residential road. And initially, there's no signs of a fire, we don't see smoke, we don't see cracked roads. It doesn't really make sense to us why they didn't start building here again. It seems totally livable to us. But Jimmy goes on and says, you can't really build on a place where there's fires underground and a random sinkhole can occur at any moment. Why would anybody invest in an area like that until you're absolutely positive that the fire's out? And being naturally curious myself, I asked Jimmy, who's in this profession, why would they just evacuate the city? Why wouldn't they attempt to put the fire out? So many people must have lost their properties. The government must have lost so much money pouring it into this place. And he said something that I found a little bit weird. He said there was actually some conspiracy around it. Apparently, they gave up pretty quickly. And I kind of understand because it's a coal mine. Like, how can you imagine fighting a coal mine fire? Like, it's really just going to keep growing and growing, especially if it's a rich mine. But they gave up almost immediately. And the government said that it would take less resources to relocate the entire town than it would to put out the fire. I personally think that's a quitter's mentality, but to each their own. But anyway, we're driving through this absolute abandoned ghost town, and I think we've seen just about everything there is to see. So I kind of started nudging Jimmy like, hey, let's get back on the highway. I'm trying to get to Philadelphia. And he's like, dude, there's one spot that you need to see. It's absolutely badass. And we get to this interesting corner of Centralia where there's really overgrown forest, but there's one residence there. It was the only structure that I'd seen since we had been through there. And it was kind of just like a small shed-like house, a trailer, and a bunch of abandoned cars. It didn't really look like anybody lived there, but some type of hermit might have. And who knows if it's their property or if they're squatting. But we park pretty close to it, and he's like, just follow me through this small little trail. We hop out of the car, we make sure the car's locked, and Jimmy leads the way, so excited. I could tell that he's pumped to show us whatever is on the other side of this small trail through this small forest. And eventually it opens up into this large concrete area. And it lived up to the hype, I'm not gonna lie. It was like walking onto an abandoned highway, like an apocalyptic highway. Think I Am Legend. It is wide, massive, and the forest has started to encroach on it. But the craziest thing about this highway was that it was clearly blocked off on either end. You can't actually get into it, but it was covered in graffiti. Like, I'm talking this massive, massive area, multiple lane highway with art all over it. And on top of that, there's these massive major cracks throughout the whole highway. And I'm not talking small little potholes or a crack here and there that you see on your regular highways. It looked like continental rifts, like a major earthquake happened right here and broke this highway into pieces. There was even areas where the cracks were so big that it looked like you could fall down under the highway. It's a genuinely dangerous place. It was like walking into a zombie apocalypse movie. And Jimmy's running around, finding the big cracks, trying to find smoke that's coming up from the ground. He's like sniffing the air, trying to get a whiff of like rotten eggs or something, maybe like a sulfur smell, anything that would indicate that carbon monoxide is coming up through the ground. Like, he's so pumped and nerded out about how this place became so deserted. And Jess and I are being very careful, watching our step, but appreciating the obscurity of this area. It was totally worth visiting. And apparently we weren't the only ones that had that idea, because we didn't see her initially, but I was looking off in the distance to our right and there was absolutely nobody. And then I got onto a crack that was kind of elevated a few feet because it had tilted, and I was able to see in the distance to our left, and I saw a woman sitting on the highway. She was completely by herself. She had dark brown hair. She was wearing a yellow dress, and she was looking down towards her feet. And you would think, oh, she's just enjoying Centralia and this graffiti highway the same way we are. But she was sitting at the edge of a very large crack, like one of those continental rift type cracks I was talking about. And she had her feet dangling. And the crack was so massive that she was like 3 or 4 feet higher than the other side of the crack. And if she fell down, she was falling in between the crack. And not only did I notice her, but I noticed that there's a smoky haze in front of her. Like, the way the sunlight was hitting her and you could see, into the horizon, I could see the smoke coming out of that particular crack. So I call over to Jimmy and I'm like, yo, there's smoke over there if you want to show us. It looks like she found it. But once Jimmy looked over and saw where she was sitting and was able to see the smoke for himself, he gets very concerned and he goes, oh, she should not be sitting there. And I'm like, why? And he's already hustling over. And he's like, dude, it's legitimately carbon monoxide. Like, she's going to get poisoned from that. So he goes into first responder mode and he starts running over, hopping over these rifts in the highway and calling over to her, just trying to get her attention while he's still further away. Because he doesn't want to run up on her and scare her like we're sprinting towards her. She's by herself, but she's not looking in our direction. So Jess and I start following. We're being a little bit more careful than Jimmy, who is incredibly agile. And we start to get a little concerned. And I'm trying to see if she has headphones in or something like that, but it doesn't look like she does. And Jimmy's absolutely shouting. So something is wrong here. And if he says the smoke is poisoning her, he's probably right. So he gets up to her first, he's standing near her, basically asking permission if he could come and check on her, like not just invade her personal space in the middle of nowhere. And he's crouched down as we finally approach them, and he's in the middle of a sentence chatting to her. And I hear his professional first responder voice going, "Hey, are you okay? Are you feeling okay? I don't think you should be sitting right here. Do you see the smoke coming out? It's probably not gonna make you feel good. There's probably a better place to sit. Are you here with anybody? Can you hear me?" Like, he's going through the gauntlet of questions, and she's completely ignoring him. And I was able to see her arms a little bit. I was able to see the side of her face a little bit. Very blank face, but there was something off about her. And to be candid, I immediately jumped to the conclusion that she might be some type of addict. At least that's what I was getting from her. She looked very worn down, not very well kept, and when she would move, it was twitchy and a little bit spastic. And Jimmy, still being the very considerate guy that he is, he starts trying to explain to her why she has to move. He deals with people like this all the time. So he starts to tell her about this highway and why this smoke is bad for her. And he gives her the cliff notes of the entire story that he told us about the mine fire and how gas is coming up from below and why this highway is so cracked. And after this whole spiel of him trying to convince her just to stand up and to go somewhere else because right here probably isn't good for her, she breaks her silence. And it was right after he said, "There's actually an underground fire that's been going on for quite a few decades." All she responded was, "There is no fire, silly." And obviously, since it's the first time that she talked, all of us went quiet because we want to hear what she has to say. And I feel heat coming from this crack that she's sitting in front of. I actually can't get that close to it. Like, when I put my hand over where the smoke was coming from, in that general area, if I held it there for a couple seconds too long, it started to hurt. And she was dangling her legs over it. So I started looking at her calves and her legs that are exposed because her dress doesn't go all the way down to her ankles. I saw that her skin was definitely being affected by it somehow. So then I start to think, how long has she been here? How long has she been exposed to this gas and that heat? I start to get genuinely concerned for her. And as we're waiting for her to speak up again, Jimmy's starting to ask her, like, "Do you mind if I move you? Do I have permission to touch you? Do I have permission to help you?" And without hesitation, she pushed her hips forward and slid herself into this massive crack. And we watched this woman slip in between loose dirt of this crack in the highway and disappear under it, like she deliberately slid herself into a sinkhole. My heart sinks and I feel like I'm gonna throw up. We just watched a girl die. Jimmy had his hands on his head and was pacing back and forth. Jess turned around, had her hands covering her mouth, trying to comprehend what she had just witnessed. And I'm in absolute shock, trying to figure out what I'm even gonna say. What's our next move? We're in the middle of nowhere. There's no fire department or police department for Centralia. We're also probably not supposed to be here. And this girl might be stuck in this sinkhole, slowly burning to death. Or suffocating on fumes, we don't know. And I'm trying to make eye contact with Jimmy. We need to get some level of dialogue going to make the proper decision here. You're the first responder, buddy, you tell me. But over his shoulder in the distance, I see somebody else approaching. And whoever it is shouting towards us, and I know right away that we're probably in trouble. We're not supposed to be here. Not only are we not supposed to be congregating in public without our faces covered, but we're probably not allowed on this abandoned death trap of a highway. And this dude is hustling over to us, waving, wearing a suit, looking like he's not very happy with us. And before he gets to us, I make sure me and Jimmy have a little bit of dialogue, and I'm like, what is the plan? Do we tell him? And Jimmy pauses for a second, and he's like, we have to tell him. She might be down there. And I totally agree with him. But this dude is stomping up to us like an absolute Paul Blart mall cop. Like, I feel his energy within 20, 30 feet of us, and he's totally here to scold us about being here. So already I know this is going to be such an annoying conversation. And of course, as he's approaching us, "You guys can't be here. Hey, you guys gotta get out of here." Just holding his finger up at us like, "I enforce the rules around here." And he has his face covered so we could only see his eyes, but he doesn't have a badge or anything like that. He has no identification on him. So I speak up first and I say, "We can't actually go anywhere right now. Something bad just happened." And he looks a little bit concerned, but he keeps trying to enforce these rules and just try to get us to leave. And Jimmy chimes in and goes, "Hey, do you work here? I'm a firefighter. Is there anybody else around here that can help us?" And the guy tries to steamroll us again, enforcing rules, restricted property, 6 feet. cover your face, until Jess can't handle it anymore and says, there's a girl down there, she's gonna die. Because that's what really needed to be said. But this dude that approached us, like I said, was in full Paul Blart mode. They can't even hear you. They're only screaming restrictions. But that seemed to snap him out of it a little bit. And he asked her right away, what was she wearing? What did she look like? I didn't like the way that he initially very aggressively started questioning her. But I can't bring that up because we just witnessed a girl slide into a sinkhole. Every second counts. So I say, who cares? Call the other people that work here. We need help. If you work here and you're enforcing the rules, you must have contacts that can also come here and help us. But he takes a long pause looking at all three of us and asks the same question. What was she wearing? What did she look like? And Jimmy chimes in very quickly to grant him an answer and reiterate that we need help. And he says, yellow dress, dark hair, we didn't see her face. Can you call your buddies now? And he looks at Jimmy, looks down into the crack, and then looks back up at all of us. And he says, I'm sorry to tell you guys, but if she fell into that sinkhole, there's no way she survived. I can radio it in, but we'll be lucky if we could even retrieve her body. If you guys really want to help her, you could help me find some contacts to one of her loved ones so we could tell them. This was very morbid. This was horrible news. The nightmare situation happened, and we felt absolutely horrible that we weren't able to stop her from doing it. And finally, this man snaps out of Paul Blart mode and introduces himself. He says, I'm really sorry you guys had to witness this. My name is Agent Connor. Nobody's supposed to be here because of how dangerous it is. I'm really sorry if I came off that way, and I'm sorry you guys had to witness that. She's a local around here. She's one of about 5 people that refused to evacuate town. We know her well. She lives about a quarter-mile away from here if you guys want to come with me to her house and help me find a phone number that we could call. I think they deserve some closure. And we all look at each other, and we all have empathy and compassion in our hearts. He works here. He knows how dangerous it is. And there's no way that we would be able to retrieve her by ourselves. So he radios in to whoever he works for and lets them know the location of where she fell. And we hear over the radio that they're going to send a retrieval team. And we start walking with him in the direction of where she apparently lived. There wasn't that much talking on the way to her house, because we were all shaken up with the reality that we just witnessed a girl die. And I could tell Jimmy felt extra guilty because he was in arm's reach. He could have grabbed her, but his reaction time wasn't fast enough. He didn't know what she was doing. I internally wanted to leave. I didn't love that we were still here. I didn't love that we stopped here in the first place. But a few minutes pass and we arrive at where that girl apparently lived. And it was a very rundown house. It was the only house on the entire block. The outside was worn, unkept, and damn near falling apart. And we're walking up to it, and I ask Agent Connor, does anybody else live here with her? And he's like, no, she's here by herself. And then he walks right up to the front door and pretty much breaks in. And I don't know how small towns work. Apparently he knows her, and apparently he knows her entire situation, which kind of makes sense because he said there was only 4 or 5 locals left. But to walk up to somebody's property and just open the front door, slide a window open, reach around, unlock it, and let yourself in, to me was a bit intrusive. But he did it as if it was completely normal. And we hear through his radio that his team or whoever that he called had arrived on scene and was trying to retrieve her body, so at least we knew that that was going on. And hopefully they would be coming here soon. Who knows if they need some type of testimony from us, but at least they might find her body. And Agent Connor walks in, and all of us, I guess, felt the exact same way, that it felt dirty to enter somebody's residence like this. And I guess Agent Connor realized that when we didn't follow him immediately through the door. So he looks back at us and he says, she always had an open door policy, guys. Don't worry about it, I need your help, come on in. So then I think he had a personal relationship with her. He's acting like she's a local, open door policy, it wouldn't be a problem whatsoever. And he needs our help, it's the least that we could do. And then he gives us some orders. You look over here, you look over here, you look over here. But the second we walk into this house, I realized that there was something seriously wrong with that woman. Yes, there was some furniture and some drawers to look through. Yes, there were some countertops with notebooks and places that we could search for potentially a contact number. But the inside of this house looked as if a mental patient lived in it. Like I'm talking somebody that needs to be institutionalized. She had something very seriously wrong going on inside of her head that led her to do what she did. She clearly had some type of infatuation or fixation on like the pattern of roots, because all over her walls, it was as if she was making a massive mural throughout her entire house in the pattern of kind of like tree roots, these swirling patterns spreading everywhere. But they were also carved into her hardwood floors. And then a little section that had carpet, it was as if she burnt the pattern into the carpet. And then on the countertops, her cups and plates were also set down into the pattern of roots. And the place was dirty and unkept. It was as if the only thing that she did from sun up to sundown was create these patterns. So Jess, Jimmy, and I, we don't spread out to where Agent Connor told us to go to. We stay close to each other because we just walked into a personal mental institution. And we only go to the kitchen counter that has a notebook on it. We're not searching through these drawers. We're not really going to look around and rummage this place. I'll open this notebook and say I did my job, because this is probably where it would be, and if it's not here, it's probably not anywhere. So we stand over this notebook and we're going page by page, and wouldn't you know it, over any phone numbers or dates or any random notes that she was taking. Just a bunch of roots throughout the entire thing, first page to last page. And she had a calendar on the wall. Every single page of the calendar. Roots, roots, roots. I'd never seen anything like it. It was so thorough. Like, no matter where you looked in this woman's house, you opened her cupboard, carved patterns. You opened her fridge, ketchup in a root pattern. It was getting to the point where I couldn't believe how much effort she had put into redesigning her home. No matter where we looked, it got to the point where each of us seemed to be a little bit curious. What corner of this house, what detail did she miss? She didn't miss a thing. They were everywhere. And eventually, 2-3 minutes later, we're standing in this newly deceased woman's kitchen, looking at each other. And Jimmy says, "Where did Agent Connors go?" There was no upstairs to this house, but there was one door open, and it went downstairs into a basement. And we all quietly walked over to this door that he must have went down. And we hear him absolutely rummaging through this basement, knocking things over, aggressively searching. And we're being as quiet as possible, and I hear his radio, I hear some voices coming through it, and he's huffing and puffing, moving furniture. He's looking for something, but he wasn't acting like that when we were with him, with that level of intensity. He walked in very calmly, like, come on, it's an open house. But now he's downstairs ripping furniture around, clearing tabletops, heavily walking, stomping around, huffing and puffing like he's putting real physical effort into this. Looking for a contact phone number? So the suspicion spreads through our entire group. And we hear the radio say something, but we can't hear what it says. But we clearly hear Agent Connor's reply, "No, I have them here with me. Can you please come handle these kids? It's gotta be down here." And all of our hearts drop because it becomes extremely, extremely clear that he did not bring us here out of the kindness of his heart. He brought us here to keep us under the same roof as him, to set us up. And he had some other agenda that he was trying to accomplish. Initially, you would think we'd be very scared, which we definitely were, but we were also a little ticked off. Mr. Paul Blart thinking he's a smart guy, playing us like a fiddle, huh? Jimmy already knows what I'm thinking. Jess definitely knows what I'm thinking, because she already has a chair in her hand. And Jimmy, slowly and quietly, closes that basement door, and Jess hands me the chair for me to wedge it in. Enjoy that, Paul Blart. The basement's your home now. And we make sure it's wedged in there really, really nice before we all agree that it's time to go. And as we all turn to leave out of the front door, ready to sprint to our car, there's already somebody at the door waiting for us. Agent Connors had called for help. He let them know that we were there, but backup hadn't arrived yet for him. But the girl did, and she was standing in her doorway, looking at 3 strangers standing in her kitchen. Yellow dress, covered in dirt, but this was the first time we saw her face, and I realized that her face was as messed up as her legs were. I can't tell if there were burn marks that accentuated varicose veins all over her body, but whatever was wrong with her legs had spread to her face, and her mouth was open. She wasn't smiling at us, it was as if she was breathing heavily and something was clogging her nose, and her teeth were brownish black, and some of them were missing. She's standing in the doorway, looking at intruders, and she holds her finger up to her mouth, telling us to be quiet. And we start whispering to her that we didn't mean to come here. We're like, we're so sorry. We thought you were dead. We were trying to find a family member for us to contact. And we start pointing down, trying to tell her that somebody's in the basement, saying he told us to come here. And she moves her hand from her mouth to her ear, trying to tell us to listen. And we didn't hear sirens and we didn't see police lights in the distance, but we heard cars accelerating, multiple, as if they were closing in on the location. Because it was such a quiet area, nobody's here. When you hear a vehicle, even in the distance, you could tell it's coming towards you. And they were driving with a purpose. And finally she talked. The last thing that she said was that there was no fire, silly. But this time she said, if they find you here, they're not just gonna kill you, they're gonna experiment. So we're stuck in between a rock and a hard place. We know that the man downstairs is actively setting us up, but we don't know if this decaying woman is worse than him. She looks like a nightmare, and she's saying very cryptic things that are laced in threats. They won't just kill you, they'll experiment on you? Is that what they did to you? Or are you in on this? There's nobody in this situation to trust, but we hear these cars getting closer and closer, and this woman in the yellow dress turns around, walks down her steps, and is going around her house. And we hear Agent Connor stomping up the stairs, and he's about to find out that we locked him in. And part of you gets that feeling like you're a toddler that is about to get in trouble with your parent approaching. And our feet start tapping the floor. We're looking left and right. We're putting our hands out at our sides to try to get balance. Do we take that chair off the door so he doesn't realize that we locked him in? Or do we follow the girl with the black teeth around her house that's speaking in riddles? I have no idea what to do in this situation, but Jimmy blurts out what he's thinking in that moment. And all he says is, "Girl?" Like girl with a question mark at the end. And Jess and I look at him and go, "Girl?" Like girl with a period at the end. Like we agree. And we get our feet under us and go out the front door and start circling the house with her. And by the time we get around the house, she's opening a cellar door that seems to go directly under her house. So I'm thinking, is she opening the other door for Agent Connor? Because it has to be attached to the same part of the basement. But I hear Agent Connor slamming on the door on the inside because he found out that we locked him down there. And she's not calling to him from the other end. So it must go to a different part of the basement. And we're basically running at this point, so it's a split second until I'm behind her and she's walking down these stairs. And I could tell by the walls leading into this part of the cellar that it's not the same part of the basement. I had peeked down that door and everything was concrete and drywall. This cellar, the walls were completely dirt, and they seem to go more into like an extended storage that the basement might not have access to. And we hear cars pulling up in the front now. So we have no choice. We've committed to this. We hustle into the cellar, close it behind us, and she locks us in with a bolt lock. I'm assuming to buy us some time in case whoever pulled up is going to be looking for us. And this girl is being a little nonchalant, a little too nonchalant for me for this situation, because we hear all of these cars pulling up and emptying, and we hear footsteps all around the house. We were totally right that this was a complete setup. Agent Connors had backup coming. We hear their footsteps in the house. We definitely hear them pull the chair from the door that was locking him in the basement. And we hear them circling the house and talking and communicating multiple radios. They were converging on our position to catch us. And this girl is acting like no big deal. So we start firing questions at her. What are we going to do down here? There's nothing in this cellar. There's nowhere to go. And as I'm scanning the entire place, I see that Jess is already looking at something in the corner. And like I said, the walls were completely dirt. And in one corner, there was this weird thing sticking out of the dirt wall, and it almost looked like a structure or like a taxidermied head, but it wasn't a deer head. The reason I thought that is because it was pretty far up the wall as if it was like mounted, but it was in the shape of like a weird egg or bulb, and it was protruding out of this dirt wall. And this woman in yellow casually walks by it, points at it, and says they're looking for this. That's why all these people are here. And I don't know how to explain what this thing looks like other than leathery, textured, bulbous, but it looks to be organic material, like some type of maybe plant, and it has a brown slimy hue to it. The frustration had entered the room, not only me but Jimmy, because he blurted out at her, "Why are there so many people here for that? What are you talking about? What even is that?" And she replies to him, again, like in riddles, "Don't worry, silly. They can't open it while I'm alive." And then she goes on to explain that Agent Connors only rushed here because he thought that she died. And she said he got a little too excited. And if we didn't tell him that we had seen her, he would have had us all detained right then and there and called that backup to take care of us on the highway. And then she said something kind of joking about him, like inferring that he just couldn't wait to find this thing. So he brought us along because he wanted to be the one to open it. And now we hear the people that are outside yanking on the cellar door. They know that we must be down here, or they're definitely going to check if we're down here. And she's walked over to another corner of this cellar that has a big crack in the floor and a very similar sinkhole-like thing. And she's walking over to it like she knows exactly what she's going to do, what we had seen her do earlier. And as she's walking over there, I can't help but to ask, why are they obsessed with that thing? And simultaneously, she says it gives them secrets as she steps directly into this sinkhole and slides into it and completely disappears, like this is fast-acting quicksand, and this woman is gone. And we're all looking at each other, stuck in this cellar. They now have a crowbar cranking the door back. They're gonna be down here any second. She didn't tell us to follow her. She didn't say anything. She gave us no instructions. But she went through the first one and she was completely fine. At least she looked as bad as she did the first time we saw her. And we all kind of know what we have to do. And Jimmy says, I'll go first. But then he warns us, don't go unless you hear me say it's okay. Because obviously he doesn't want us all to fall to our death. But staying here isn't a good option. So he takes a deep breath, steps his first foot in, and the ground is giving out under his foot. And he hops his second foot in and disappears within a second. And Jess and I are standing there, not knowing if Jimmy just fell into a fiery abyss. And we're waiting to hear him. We don't hear anything for 3, 4, 5 seconds, and we hear the cellar door being ripped from his hinges, and then ever so faintly, we hear, "You're good." And then I hear it again. It's Jimmy's voice, "You're good." So then I have to decide, do I send Jess down first, or do I go down first to double check if it's safe? But I come to the conclusion, I have to send her first, because if I go first and they get down here, then they have her. So as scared as she is, I hustle her over to this sinkhole, and I make her hop in. She's gone. The cellar door is completely off, and I don't even bother taking a cautionary step. I jump into this thing, and it was nothing like I expected. I thought I was gonna pop out the other end, and Jimmy and Jess were gonna catch me and go, everything's okay. But 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds pass, and it's as if I'm slowly moving through very fine dirt, and I can't breathe at all. I'm completely suffocating in total darkness. I can't hear anything, I can't see anything, and the weight of the dirt around me is pressing down on my lungs. And right as I'm about to start absolutely freaking out, I feel my feet get a little freedom, because I was trying to wiggle my entire body to absolutely no avail. But I feel my toes, feet, ankles, knees, then my hips, and before you know it, I'm coming out the other end, landing on my stomach in what seems to be some type of tunnel. And I get to my feet to make sure Jess is okay. And she is, but right away when I see her face, I see that she's sweating. She's sweating pretty profusely. And then I start to feel it. It feels like we're in an oven. It must be 110, 115 degrees down here. I see the dots on Jimmy's forehead. He looks very concerned, and he says, she's already going. We have to follow her. And it's very dark down there. I look down this tunnel and I barely see what's left of her yellow dress. She didn't even wait for me. She was already moving. So I have to get to my feet, and we all have to run as we're slightly ducking to catch up to this girl. And it's not like she was running away from us, but she wasn't waiting. There was no consideration, and we don't know if these people are gonna follow us down this sinkhole. So I'd almost rather her be hustling and running like we need to get away. She's being so nonchalant. And we catch up to her, and we're asking her questions, and we're trying to get her to speak more. But now that we're down here, now she has no answers for us. Now it'll all make sense when we get there. And we have to take her word for it in this dark underground tunnel that feels like we might turn a corner and there might be a mine fire. Like, we can't stay in this tunnel for more than 20 minutes. It's legitimately a sauna. And she's casually walking through because her skin's callous to it. And there are a couple of forks in the road in this tunnel where we can take a left, we can take a right, but we just keep going straight. She's casually walking, we're desperately following her. And then it feels like the tunnel's going uphill. Like, almost as if we are climbing, like we are on an incline. But it's going on an incline for too long. Because if it's doing it for like 20, 30, 40 feet, maybe we're closing in on an exit, like some trap door that she has. But it keeps going on an incline. And I'm thinking, this doesn't make any sense. We'd already be at ground level. How are we going up? But she's not answering us. She doesn't have any answers for us when we're in the sauna. She's conserving her energy. And the heat is really starting to wear on us. An incline in a sauna is nothing to play around with. And as I'm about to bring it up to the entire group, that I'm internally panicking, we see the end of the tunnel. The tunnel stops, but we don't really see an exit. We just see a dirt wall, a string hanging from the top of the tunnel, and a chain. And she walks up to it, and she grabs the string and pulls on it a few times. And very faintly, through whatever dirt is in between us and the surface, we hear that it's ringing a bell, like she's letting somebody know above ground that we're below. And the chain wasn't just dangling. The chain seemed to be on a loop. Like both ends of the chain were going into this dirt ceiling. And then I see the chain starting to move. And I could see that the dirt that it's hanging out from is all loose dirt. And the chain is moving through it. And then she grabs a hold of the chain with both hands and lets it pull her up through the loose dirt until her arms are gone and her head is gone, then her torso and her feet. She didn't give us any explanation. She simply grabbed a hold of it and disappeared, seemingly going upwards through one of these sinkholes. And it's going for about 5 or 10 seconds until it stops. And we're looking at each other drenched in sweat, not having any other option but to mimic what she just did. So Jimmy takes the lead again, rings the bell, grabs a hold of the chain, and slowly disappears into the ceiling. So I make Jess go next. She rings the bell, I tell her to take a deep breath and not to panic, and I watch her do the same thing. I look back down the tunnel, it's completely dark, it's hot, and there's nothing I want more than to get out. So I ring the bell, I grip the chain, and before you know it, I'm suffocating again, and this chain is going slow, and there's friction. And it's not like it's easy to hold on. My hands were completely sweating. I'm slipping, and this chain is cranking, and I can't breathe at all. 5 seconds pass, 10 seconds feels like an eternity. The chain is slipping through my hands at certain points, and I'm hoping that whoever's cranking it doesn't stop, thinking that I made it out the top because I haven't. I'm trying to stay calm the best that I can. Finally, I feel fresh air on my hands, and then fresh air on my face. And the chain stops cranking when I'm halfway out the dirt. Like if my hands were even more slippery, I potentially could have been stuck in there. But with both of my arms out and my 2 friends above ground, they yank me out of the sinkhole, and I realize why we were going uphill for so long. We were on the top of a hill, so we actually were going uphill. We had a full scenic view of the entire area. We were high above Centralia, and there was one house up there. The sinkhole that we were pulled through was in this small, tiny shed. But since the girl in yellow had already opened the front door, I was able to see how high we were. And she's already outside of the shed waiting for us, not in a rush whatsoever. And Jimmy, Jess, and I are right outside of the shed looking back out of the sinkhole that we were just yanked out of. And I see another one of those weird, brown, slimy bulbs coming out of the ground like 3 feet behind that sinkhole. And this one twitched, just a light twitch, like whatever it was alive. And that's the second one that we saw. So we turn around and we look at her for answers, and she's looking over the horizon. Like I said, we were on the top of a hill. We're able to see everything in the distance. And we walk over to her and we look at what she's looking at. And she's looking directly to another tall hill far in the distance. So there's like a valley in between our hill and that hill. And there's one large building on that hill. And it's clearly a church. So we're looking at it with her, and it had lightly snowed the day before, so there was a little bit of white over the entire area. But there were these random clearings in between us and that church, where it was flat ground, no trees, and we could see what the ground was like in between us. And I don't know how else to explain it, but it was the exact patterns that we saw in her house. It was these root patterns in these clearings, but they didn't seem to be man-made because you couldn't do that. The root pattern, the pattern on this landscape, was caused from the heat of the tunnels below. The snow was melted where there were tunnels, creating this root-like pattern. And from everything that we could see, every single clearing that had this pattern, it was clear that they all converged on that church. Every single route led back to the church on the other hill. And Jess breaks the silence. We're all seeing the exact same thing. And she goes, "Why are they all leading back to that building?" And the woman in yellow says, "Because that's where they started feeding it." At that point, I didn't really want to know what else was going on here. I didn't want to know what it was. So I ask what I want to know. Can you get us back to our car so we could leave this nightmare zone? And she's pretty responsive to it. And she claps back at me. "I'll help you if you help us first. My friend lives here and he needs our help." I'm like, "Okay, what do we got to do for your friend?" And in my head, I'm like, "Okay, that's a pretty fair exchange. Let's go ahead and help her friend, and then let's get out of here." She seems to know her way around this place. As horrible as those sinkholes are, we could do it 1 or 2 more times to get away from Agent Connors and his minions. And we know that we can't navigate back to our vehicle without her. So whatever she needs help with, we need to do it, and we need to do it fast. So we all nod in agreement, like, "Okay, whatever you need, let's do it." She nods back and she nonchalantly turns around because Miss Never in a Rush and walks towards the house that's on the top of this hill. And I remember back to what Agent Connors said, but there's only a couple locals here, so this must be another one of the locals that refused to sell their property and stayed here after the mass evacuation. So we follow her around back, she opens the door. I guess it is an open door policy around here because she's bringing strangers into somebody else's house. So at least he didn't lie about that. And I was initially relieved because the interior of this house wasn't as bad as hers. It didn't look like a psycho lived there. It definitely didn't look very well kept, but it wasn't a massive art project, and I started to become optimistic just for a moment, until I completely lost trust in this woman, because in the far end of this living room, we saw the state of her friend, the person that we were supposed to help, and I realized that we had walked into a torture chamber. And there was a man sitting on the floor, clearly suffering from the same condition that she was suffering from. Very similar protruding veins and the black rotting teeth. But this man had a harness around his torso that was chained to the floor. And his legs were out in front of him like he was sitting on his tush, but his legs were shriveled up into nothing. It wasn't like he was paralyzed. It was like life was being drained out of the lower part of his body, and there was no bones left in his legs. They were small black shrivelly noodles. Like the decay that was happening in their mouths was also happening to his legs, and dangling in front of him was a chain attached to a contraption that led out of the house to the shed, and he was harnessed to the ground because when the bell rang that was next to him, it was clearly his job to pull on the chain. So this man was chained to the ground, and his only purpose was to pull the chain when the bell rang. And this girl utilizes these sinkholes. So who put him there? There's only one person that I'm thinking of, but the worst part about this guy was his face. He had a large spike or some type of splinter through his left cheek, going deep into the back of his throat and out the back of his neck. It looked like it had been stuck there for months, and it stopped him from closing his jaw. It was through his cheek, but in between his teeth. But he didn't look like he was in immediate pain. He looked like he had been like that for so long that he was used to it. So I'm looking at a man with a spike in his face, and his sole purpose in this life is to pull a chain when a bell rings. This is torture. And I see from the corner of my eye that Jess turns around because she can't look at it. She's got a strong stomach, but not for torture. And Jimmy again turns into first responder mode. He's seen people in very bad shape, and he starts talking to the girl in yellow and says, "I don't think we could remove that. I think he'll die." And I start stepping closer, and Jimmy gets a closer look. We're looking down at this man who's chained to the floor, and he's looking up at me with the most bizarre look in his face. He has a spike in his mouth, out the back of his neck. His legs are black and shriveled, and his eyes look kind. He doesn't look like he's in pain. He looks like he's worried about me. He almost has pity in his eyes, but that kind pity, like a grandpa looking at his granddaughter who got her heart broke for the first time in freshman year of high school. It's like a sweetness to the look in his eyes, but his situation is absolutely gruesome, but he's not breaking eye contact with me. And the woman in yellow breaks the silence and says, "You can't just take it out. You have to put it right back in. You can't let us die." So we look at her so confused, because do you want this thing removed or not? Talking about put it right back in. We're gonna yank the spike out and put it in. You want us to stab him? And second, what do you mean us? What do you have to do with this? He's got the spike in his face, and we're staring at this girl, so confused. And I look back at this tortured man who hasn't broke his eye contact with me. It seems as if he's trying to communicate with me that he agrees with her. Like he's not looking at me for help from her. I could see he's agreeing. So I look back at her, and she's pulled half of her dress up to reveal her abdomen, and she has a massive spike going through her right side, coming out of her back, and it looks like it's as embedded as his, and she says, "You can't let us die." So now the us thing made sense. She too was impaled by some splinter spike, but hers was in a much better place than his was. So now we have two impaled people in front of us begging for help. And Jimmy says to her, "I don't think I can take that out either. I think you need real medical attention." And she snaps on him and says, "It doesn't matter what happens to me. It only matters that I'm not dead before it's in you. Otherwise they can harvest it." Now it made sense. She wasn't asking us to take it out of them and put it back into them. She was asking us to take it out of them and impale ourselves with it. She was asking us to stab ourselves. And from the looks of it, she was also asking us to trade places with them. She wanted one of us to man the chains, and she has her hand over the edge of the spike now, looking like she might consider gripping it and ripping it out of herself and charging us. So we take a couple steps back so she doesn't have the luxury of doing it herself. And I can't help but to look at the man chained to the ground, and he doesn't seem to be upset with us retreating. His eyes remain the exact same, but she's starting to freak out. And we're backing up closer and closer to the door. Every step that she takes towards us, we take one back. We're trying to get more information from her, asking what are they going to harvest? What are you talking about? She's saying things like the bulb, they're going to kill you. And in that moment, we have to come to terms with the fact that she wasn't there to help us. She didn't help us get out of that last situation out of the kindness of her heart or the distrust of Agent Connors. She got us out of that situation so we could trade places with her. There was no trust left in the entire town of Centralia. We were on our own, and I grabbed Jess and we backed up out of that front door, and she's screaming and pleading, the girl in yellow, saying things like he can't take it anymore. He's gonna die soon. Someone has to take his place, and then screaming things like they're gonna kill you, they're gonna catch you, they're gonna kill you. But from our perspective, the chance to get away from Agent Connors and his minions was better than impaling ourselves with those diseased spikes that were inside of them. And finally, I break eye contact with the chain man, and we turn around and we start booking it downhill in the direction that we know we came from, going back towards her house, because at least we know how to get to our car from her house. And we're doing our absolute best to conceal ourselves, also looking over our shoulder to make sure that she's not following us, trying to get distance between us and her, but not run up on all of these government workers and completely blow our cover. So luckily, there's a lot of forest area, and we're going from tree to tree, concealing ourselves the best we can, looking around, making sure we're not making too much noise. And it takes us about 20 minutes to get pretty close to her house. And there's still people around it, but they can't see us. We're still pretty deep into the tree line. There's not as many people there anymore, but they're lingering around the area, I'm assuming, to see if we come back. But we have no intention on going back to that house. We know that if we can see it, we know what direction that we could go to get back to the car and to get back to Graffiti Highway. So we stay deep into the tree line so the workers that are there can't see us moving, and we make our way to the right towards Graffiti Highway. Unfortunately, we're going to have to cross Graffiti Highway in order to get to where we parked. So we're being as stealthy as we possibly can, not speaking at all, only hand signals, making our way through this forest until we get to the edge of the tree line with Graffiti Highway right in front of us. And we could see the entrance that we took into Graffiti Highway right across. And we could see down that trail a little bit. We can't see our car, but we could see the area, and we could see that there's movement in the area. And we stay there for long enough that we could see that it's most likely Agent Connors and multiple workers. We didn't see him yet, but we could tell that they were congregating near our vehicle. And every once in a while, one of the workers would come up to the highway, look around, clearly looking for us, and then head back towards the vehicle. And we have to wait and wait and wait because they cannot see us from where we're hiding. But the second we're out in the open, the highway is wide. We have to make sure that nobody is looking down Graffiti Highway when we cross, so we can get behind trees on the other side. And then we'll be close enough to see how many workers are actually there and if it's even possible for us to get to our car. But at least we'll know where we are so we can make our way back to the main road. So we let the workers come back and forth, and it seems like they only check once every 5 minutes. So we wait until the one that's doing it consistently leaves, so we know we have 5 minutes. We give him 20 seconds to get far enough away so he won't hear our footsteps sprinting. We all look at each other and we know this is our only chance. If someone sees us, we have to run. We're in a foot race then. So if we could get across and hide, best case scenario, but if someone sees us, it's on. We all take a few deep breaths, we make sure we're ready to sprint. I make sure Jess is really close to me and we let Jimmy lead the way so we can mimic his footsteps, because there's all of those cracks throughout the entire highway. But if I could see where he's stepping, it gives us a better chance of getting across. And it's 3, 2, 1. We emerge from the tree line, we're sprinting, hopping over rifts in the highway. I'm looking to the left, nobody. Looking at the tree line in front of us, there's no workers watching us, we're good. I look to my right, someone emerged from the tree line with us. But it's not a government worker, it's a woman. And she's about 30 feet away from us, to our right, seemingly crossing the highway with us, as if she was waiting for us to go, and she was coming along for it. She was mirroring us as we were crossing. But I can't look at her the entire time. We have to cross this highway. Everybody's focused on their footwork. As long as the workers don't see us, that's best case scenario, and she's clearly not one of the workers. I don't get a good enough look at her to rule out that it's the girl in yellow, but she clearly changed outfits if it is, because she was wearing more of like a casual outfit, t-shirt, jeans. But I can't stop and question her. I can't even look at her that much. I have to focus on getting us across this highway. And every single moment I'm expecting to hear one of the workers say, "There they are," and they all come pouring out of the tree line and detain us for some weird reason. But we get across and we get into the tree line. We get into some bushes behind some trees, and it doesn't seem like anybody saw us. But I was the only one that saw the woman mirror us across the highway. So Jess and Jimmy are looking to see where the workers are. We're all ducking, and we seem to be properly concealed. But I'm looking to our right to see where the woman is. I don't see her, but I do hear Agent Connors. Our car is a little bit further in the distance, and there's workers walking around the area calling out to us. Somehow, he knew our names. We didn't introduce ourselves to them, which means they looked at the license plate and somehow they figured out all of our names. Because that's Jimmy's car. How is he saying our names? But he sounds so concerned. He sounds like he's pleading to the woods, like he's a dear friend on the verge of tears, so worried about our well-being, pleading for us to come out like he's just here to help. We're watching him through these bushes and then we're looking at each other. He looks concerned. He looks really upset. The girl in yellow was an absolute nightmare. She did not have good intentions for us. Maybe we misread this entire situation. And I know all of us were on the verge of standing up and saying, "Hey, we're right here. Oh my God, you're so worried about us. We misread everything. We're so sorry for locking you in the basement." And he's about 30 feet away from us. We could see his face. And in the middle of this wailing to the woods, trying to tell us he is just here to help, he switches off. His face went from pure concern, his voice was cracking, to dead face, disdain all over his expression, like he was disgruntled and annoyed that his fake pleads to the woods weren't working. He had no idea we were looking at his face when he did it. It was like night and day sociopath, like he was putting on an Oscar-worthy performance till he's sitting down and watching TV, and that was horrifying. We almost believed him, but whatever that man is some shade of evil. If you're capable of doing that, there's no trust in this world for you. None of us can believe our eyes how well he did it. He would have fooled all of us. If we were alone and we didn't have to kind of silently communicate a group decision, I think all three of us would have revealed ourselves if we were solo. And I'm looking at Jimmy like, can you believe that guy? But then I get a tap on my arm from Jess. She's looking towards our right, and she directs my gaze to the woman that mirrored us. She's hiding behind a tree too. She's about 20 yards away from us, looking directly at the sides of our faces. But she looks much more normal. She doesn't look like she's suffering from that same condition that the girl in yellow was, but she does tell us to be quiet. I don't like that, because that's exactly what the girl in yellow did. But this woman did something slightly different. She held up a set of car keys and gave them a little jingle to show us that she had a car as well. And then she waved us towards her. She looked like she was in normal clothes. She didn't look like she was suffering from whatever infection that spike was spreading. She didn't look like a government worker either. So we make our way to her, from tree to tree, making sure that none of the government workers are looking in our direction. We're basically crawling until we get to these bushes that are close enough for us to whisper. And I'm inspecting her entire body. I'm trying to see if she has a spike through her. Maybe she has a new fresh one that hasn't spread yet. And Jimmy whispers to her, "Where's your car?" And she whispers back, "We're gonna use your car." Initially, I think, how does she know about our car? And why would she hold up a set of keys to get us to come over here? And then I hear Agent Connors shouting into the woods again, walking in our direction. And I look at Jess, and she asks the girl, "Are you setting us up?" Immediately asking her the real questions. We've been set up twice already. We don't trust anybody in this town. And she goes, "I'll explain everything after." She puts her thumb on one of the buttons on this key fob, and I hear some of the government workers walking towards us. Agent Connors getting closer and closer. She clicks the button, and I hear a car alarm go off, and it's one of the cars that were in that small residence, like that little junkyard area that we parked near. And again, we were able to see Agent Connors when she did it. And when I tell you, these people were ravenously trying to catch us. The second he heard the alarm, I'm talking full sprint in the direction of the sound. Went from pretending to be worried to aggressive, mean sprint to the alarm, all of them. We wait about 5 seconds until they exit the woods and they're converging on the car, thinking that we are behind it, and set off that alarm. And this girl that has the keys gets up, starts running towards our car. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna beat her to the car. Because even though she did that, don't trust her. We all immediately get up and start sprinting with her. Jimmy whips around the front of his vehicle. All of the workers converged on the other location. He's in the driver's seat. I make Jess get in the front seat because I have an idea. And I tell this girl, only this door works. So she's halfway around to the other side. but I make her come back to my side. I open the door, I sit in, and I stiff arm her in her face. And I'm telling Jimmy to drive, because why are you trying to get in our car? Who are you? I'm not letting another person in this town set us up. And as Jimmy's revving the engine, she's trying to force herself into this car, and I'm smushing her lips with the palm of my hand. She gets out a muffled, "They blocked the exits. You'll never get out without me." I don't know if it's true, but my elbow has never bent so quickly, and my hand went from stiff-arming her face to grabbing her collar and yanking her in the vehicle, and reaching over and closing the door behind her. I have her pinned in the corner of the back seat, and I tell Jess to climb into the back seat to check her for one. And I was talking about one of the spikes, and she has both of her hands on my forearm. She's not really fighting back. She's calling out directions to Jimmy. Like, I'm being pretty physical with her. Jess is checking her abdomen, her leg, making sure that she doesn't have a large spike in her. She's calling over us, allowing us to do this, saying left, right here, take a right here. Like, she's focused on our getaway plan while we're focused on patting her down. And we get out of the area fairly quickly. She knows her way around this town, and we're on a small dirt road headed in a direction that we're not aware of, but there's no workers in sight. It seems as if the directions that she's giving are legitimate, and Jess didn't feel a spike anywhere. And eventually, after about 10 minutes of driving, me wishing we got back to the highway, but kind of liking the fact that we haven't seen any of the government workers, we pull up to another house, another worn down house in the middle of nowhere. And she goes, "Park right here, I'll put a tarp over your car." And I let her go, and unprompted, she says to Jess and I don't have a thorn, you don't have to worry. And she hops out, she goes and grabs a tarp, she brings it back to the car, and we completely hide the car under the tarp in another kind of junkyard area. It was similar to the other residents. And she's walking towards the house, and all three of us are like, does she think that she's going to be the third person to convince us to walk into a random house? There's 5 houses in this entire town. We've been in 2 of them, both nightmare zones. You think you're gonna trick us just because you got us our car back? But she says that she'll explain everything. She says, I'll be completely honest. I don't have a thorn. My dad does though. And I immediately think, we're about to walk into another torture chamber. What is wrong with these people? Let us out of this town. But again, unprompted, she says, guys, don't worry. I'm not gonna try to make you take it. Just get inside before they see us. We aren't completely sold, because are we going to get fooled for the 3rd time in a row? But she introduces herself. She says, I'm Catherine Lawson, and I promise you, I will explain everything that's going on, and I'm going to get you out of this town by tonight. But you have to come inside. The workers are everywhere. We all look at each other, and we give a kind of confused nod. We've survived 2 of these houses already. How bad can this one be? And we're going to peek in before we even get in there. So we follow Catherine up to her porch. She opens the screen door, looking over her shoulder, seeing if there's anything freaky in there, but it's nothing like the first 2 houses. It's tidy, it's well kept, it looks clean in there. It looks like a fairly happy home. So Jimmy goes in first, I go in second, peeking around the corners, seeing if there's anything heinous and hideous, but it's nothing. It really looks like a happy house. And she starts apologizing. I'm so sorry you guys are going through this. I'm so sorry you came here. I'm gonna do everything in my power to get you out of this town. And I'm liking what I'm hearing. Even though everybody had lied to us up to this point, she was a really good liar, if she was. And I almost started to trust her until I looked into one of the bedrooms that had the door open, and I saw some feet laying on a bed, and the bed frame was metal. And as I was about to grab Jimmy and Jess's shoulder and drag them out of the house to get back into our car and drive straight through whatever barricade was holding us in this freaky town, she said, "That's my dad. He's chained down." She knew exactly what I was thinking. She said, "He has a thorn. I told you he has one. I promise you he is not going to hurt you. I'm not going to try to make you take it. You have to wait until the sun goes down. Your only chance of getting out of here is waiting till nighttime." Again, she was building trust with me. She was answering questions before I even asked them. I like that. When everybody's withholding information and somebody comes along and starts donating information, I know what you're thinking. Here's exactly what you need to know. This was music to my ears. And then she told us, please don't go in there. It doesn't look good. And my father doesn't like people to see him in that state, which we were kind of iffy about because now you're withholding from us. But Jimmy breaks his silence by saying, can you please just tell us what's going on here? Like everything, A to Z. And Catherine takes a big deep breath, and right before she starts to talk, a radio goes off on the table, and it's one of the workers' radios, and they're reporting that our car is gone, and they're saying to keep the checkpoints manned and to not let us leave. And we all freak out because why does she have one of those? Is she one of them? But again, she jumps in front of our question. She sees the anxiety in us rise, and she goes, I stole it from them, so I know what they're doing. It's totally okay. They are not going to check here first. We never give them problems. Again, we liked that she was getting ahead of it. We're like, okay, keep talking then. She asks us to follow her and to sit down. We sit down on this little table that she has that has all of these trinkets that she clearly eats at by herself every single day. It's clear that she's her father's caretaker, and she starts to tell us the truth about Centralia. She goes, I don't really know where to start, but I'm gonna do my best. There's no fires here. There was no landfill fire, there was no mine fire. This place was evacuated because of the experiments that they were doing at that church. There was some type of lab underground under that church where they were doing heinous things, and something came from underneath them and presented itself to these awful men. I don't know if they were scientists, I don't know if they were intelligence, I don't know if they were Satan worshippers, nobody does. But they were doing something under that church that attracted the first bulb. Before you ask me what these bulbs are, I don't know. I really have no idea. Ours presented itself to my grandfather before I was even alive, and he said that it used to speak to him. It used to call to him, and it told him what it wanted from him. He used to say that it would speak directly into his head, like he could hear it, he was communicating with it. And all this thing wanted was to bargain a life for secrets. It has very simple rules. And on one random afternoon, when my grandfather went to go speak to it, to his little secret, he came back with a thorn in his arm. And that's when it started to spread. He stayed alive, but once the thorn was in his arm, it's as if he knew what the bargain was really about. And he told us that if he dies with this thorn inside of him, then the bargain is complete and the bulb will open. He said things like, it needs death to harvest. But once the thorn was in him, it also seemed to unlock the thing's true intentions. He said he started to have visions of what its goals were, and its goal was just to spread. This thing was undeniable evil. It had no good in it. So even though he had this relationship with it, that it called to him, once he had the thorn in him, it was almost as if he had a righteous purpose. He said if he took it out of himself, he would die, and that eventually my father was going to have to take the thorn, because as long as a living being has this bulb's thorn in it, it can't be harvested, and there's no way around it. And I guess those workers, those people that you saw here, they were privy to the same rules. They knew they couldn't tamper with the rules that this thing abided by, and the only thing that they care about is getting more secrets from it. Apparently the secrets were so valuable that whatever this group was had used the secrets as leverage to have the government evacuate the area to search for more bulbs and harvest them. It started small by the church, and they started privately buying properties to where they thought it was spreading, and they would have families leave so they could be in charge of the harvest, so they could sacrifice something to the bulb. Once they located it, here's something that you could put your thorn in, and they let it die. And once you harvest a bulb, it then spreads further. And after you buy 5-10 houses and they're completely vacant, and there's government workers all over a side of town, the locals start to question it. They don't know what's going on. These people are asking questions that these workers don't like. They don't want to have to answer these questions. They're here for the secrets. So they thought the best thing that they could do, the easiest way around this, is to do a false flag event. Say that the mine under the town is completely on fire. Say that there's a raging inferno right underneath your feet, and if you don't evacuate immediately, you're all gonna die. Here, we'll help you. We'll buy out your property, we'll help you relocate. Everybody's gotta go. We gotta do it within a month. And it worked. They used fear. They used a false flag, and they got everybody to pick up their entire lives and leave the area because they wanted to continue letting this thing spread. But the 5 families that already had a bulb on their property, that they had already been stung by it, it triggered the same thing that happened to my grandfather. And they found that it was their righteous purpose to prevent this thing from spreading. And they knew that it didn't matter if the workers came and tried to intervene. If they did anything to us, it would act like trimming a bulb. And there were only 5 bulbs. So if they hurt any of the locals that chose to stay, they were basically snipping any chance for this thing to spread further. So for an entire generation, they have been working, waiting for the opportunity, pretending to be kind to us, pretending to work around us, drooling at the thought of one of us slipping up and allowing this thing to harvest and spread. When my father can't handle it anymore, I'm going to take the thorn. Sabrina and Aaron can't take it much longer. That's why they asked you to take it. They actually aren't locals. They were tourists in a very similar situation that you're in. They sacrificed themselves to stop it from spreading. And I'm not going to ask you to do the same. It's not your responsibility. I'm going to help you get out of here. So this was so much information all at once. Apparently, the girl in yellow is named Sabrina, and the man that we saw chained to the floor was named Aaron. And then the look in his eyes made sense to me. That man sacrificed himself for a righteous cause, and he didn't look down at us for not wanting to do it ourselves. That was a kind, selfless man that took that thorn in order to prevent this thing from spreading. And Sabrina is a random tourist that came to this town and was never able to leave. But there was still a major issue here. How are we going to get out of this town when these government workers are actively hunting us, and I'm assuming are going to try to use us as sacrificial lambs when there's a bulb to harvest? And Jimmy asked Catherine, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of here if they're blocking all the exits? And Catherine looks at all of us and says, they can't block them at night. They're all too scared. And we look at her a little bit confused, like, come on, give us the rest of the information. This sounds good. And she says that there's a reason that Erin and her dad are chained down. And it's because if you're stung, you have no control over how you act at night. These are righteous people, but at night, they're not there anymore. They're not gonna help you. They're gonna act on behalf of the bulbs. And the workers are terrified of them. They all go back to the church the second the sun goes down. So that's going to be your way out. And then she picks up the walkie-talkie and says into it, Agent Connors, you're needed at the Lawson house. And we look at her like, did you just tattletale on us? Again, not trusting the situation. And she looks up at us and she says, Agent Connors is a little selfish. And we don't really know what it means. But he responds, copy that, I'll be there in 5. We look outside of the window, the sun's going down. She said that they all flee back to the church when the sun goes down. So it's not really adding up. And he's not there in 5 minutes, he's there in 3. She has us hide in the other spare bedroom, and he knocks on the door, and she answers it like they're kind of buddy-buddy, but you could tell there's an underlying tension. And he's like, what do you need, Catherine? Like they butt heads a little bit. And he goes, it's almost nighttime, you know I have to head out. And then Catherine's plan starts to make sense. She says, Agent Connors, Aaron died today. Sabrina brought those outsiders to his house, and she tried to pass his thorn to them, and it didn't work. I just thought you should know. You've always been very kind to me and my father. When I tell you, this man, all of his kindness towards Catherine and her father was so fake because he didn't even reply to her. He took off sprinting in the direction of Aaron's house. He was acting buddy-buddy with a little bit of catty banter, but the second he got the information that he wanted, that there was a bulb ready to harvest, he wanted to go to it. He didn't radio it in, he wanted it. And it was very similar to the way that he reacted when he thought Sabrina died, the girl in yellow. He didn't wait on Graffiti Highway with us. He wanted to be the one there to find it because he wanted the secrets. He was only going to call it in after he harvested it. And he was so obsessed with it that he was willing to risk it. The sun was going down, but he thought that he could get there before it did. And he probably could. And Catherine closes the door, and we come out of the spare bedroom, and she's smiling at us. And we hear on the radio all of the workers saying, head back to the church. Everybody that's on duty in the area is called to go back to where they stay. There's not going to be anybody at the checkpoints. And all Catherine says is, all we have to do is wait 5-10 minutes until the sun's down and you guys are home free. And we go, how will we know when it's safe? And how many other locals aren't chained down? And she says Sabrina is the only one that isn't chained down, and you'll know when it's safe. Just listen to the radio. And we sit there for about 5-10 minutes. The sun is completely down, and we hear Agent Connors radio to the rest of his workers, frantically screaming for help. I'm at the Aaron residence. I need backup. I need backup. I thought the bulb was ready. It was a trap. Sabrina's here. And then it's muffled screams. And we look at Catherine, and we did have trust for her, but she just set him up. And Jessica asks her, did Sabrina kill him, or did she pass Aaron's thorn to him? And Catherine, with a grin on her face, said, either way works. Take 2 lefts and a right, and you guys will be back on the highway. But if you see Sabrina, don't stop for her. I promise she's not your friend at night. Turns out you can't trust anybody in Centralia. Spooky place, very dark history. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. I hope you consider subscribing to the channel if this is your first time here, or second or third. Please like the video if you haven't already, and please give us a 5-star rating if you're listening on a podcast platform. And I have a very fun, exciting announcement. We've partnered up with Spotify, and we're doing a Halloween exclusive video on Spotify. So search American Hex on Spotify on October 31st. For an exclusive video. It's completely free. Don't be in the comments saying that I'm making you pay for something or putting something behind a paywall. I'm not. Spotify is just doing us a solid and featuring us on their homepage, which is really awesome, and we're really excited about it, so we wanted to make a video special for them. It's completely free. Don't you dare say it in the comments. And if you like this video, YouTube thinks you would also like this one.